we have very different authors on because Chris Houston from the Idea Shop always brings us something different. And this, of all the books and ideas, is so fascinating. Number one, we're a booze family. So when I received this lovely package that looked like wedding invitations from a Wiccan marriage, it came in black with wax on it that looked like blood. And the first thing I thought was, well, I'm opening this. Where some people aren't. I'm delving into this, and then reading Lindsay's background. Lindsay Merbaum, who's going to join us, and I believe calling us from Michigan. It has every element of something that I just find fascinating. And looking at the elements of her newest book, The Gold Persimmon, it has the feel of like Netflix. Where are you on this one? Like just look at this. This is your next series. This is seasons of weirdness. I mean, is it Stranger Things? Is it Stephen King? Is it David Lynch? Yeah, it's all that and booze. What else do you need to know, for God's sakes? And Lindsay Merbaum joins us now. Good morning, Lindsay.
Morning. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm already tearing up because I'm laughing so hard.
Well, and I have to thank you for those for the cocktail recipes, because we're a family that is just so interested in mixology. I mean, it's people talk about all the different things I guess one can do in their lifetime to have fun, and I guess part of it now is recreational drugs and cannabis and that kind of stuff. I have no time for this. I have not when I've got someone behind there with a bow tie and a shaker, and I can hear the blenders, and I see things with smoke in it. I'm like, oh, okay, this is a show. I mean, I don't think there's anything more social. I'm also a cigar guy too, so this falls right into what I want to do. And the old style American hotels, the way that they were set up, like the Drake in Chicago and so on, where you'd have these dark rooms and a lot of cigar smoke and jazz playing music, and maybe people who aren't that reputable. That's where you'd find me, because I love the old style, and that is something that is gone by the wayside because of rules and of course the smoking and stuff like that. But don't you think, Lindsay, there still is a romance to hotels that when done right, and I don't mean like the chic boutique-y ones, I mean the old style, maybe going down to certain hotels in New York City, it still has a romance to it. I find there's still an attraction for it.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. One of the reasons I ended up writing a book about two very strange and unique hotels is because I find them so fascinating. And even, there's a range in terms of opulence, decor, like the kind of vibe or mood that hotels present for you. And even the like seedy ones all the way to the really nice specialty ones, there's a certain vibe, there's a certain energy when you enter a hotel. And I'm with you, like I love like old velvet and like leather chairs and like, Art Deco, and like I love that vibe. But I think that what's interesting about hotels is that they're an in-between space. They're a public space. I mean, you're in a room with strangers on either side of you and above and below you. It's a hive of strangers, basically. But there's also this illusion of privacy, despite the fact that people you don't know come in and out of your room every day and observe how you conduct yourself in your room, like where you put your stuff and what stuff you have and all of that. And then you're crossing paths in the hallway with people from all over the place. And who knows why they're there? They could be there for an event. They could be there for an affair. They could be there to, work on something they don't want people to know about. So I got really fascinated by that dichotomy of public and private in the same space. And that was part of why I ended up writing a book about two hotels. But it was actually this book that got me into mixology, really, because I was already doing drinks and I love to do themed drinks. And then I decided I'm going to make drinks to go with this book. And it's going to be a pre-order giveaway, because in publishing, pre-orders, meaning ordering the book before it officially comes out, it's actually a big deal in terms of how sales are calculated. And so I said to my publisher, Creature Publishing, run by two amazing women in New York City, yeah, I want to do these drinks. I want to do cocktails and mocktails based on the theme of the book. So one is called the Clytemnestra, who's a main character. One is called the Red Orchid, another is the Gold Persimmon, another is Sex and Mirrors and Do Not Disturb and The Fog, and each has a cocktail and mocktail. And then I said, okay, hey, other authors we're all supporting each other, as we publish books. Who else wants a book tale? Well, a lot of people did, it turned out. I got a sign-up sheet and It filled up. And so from there, my mixology business called Pick Your Potions just kind of exploded. And so I do custom drinks for all kinds of things, for brands, for individual people, like for a birthday, for weddings, for events, all kinds of stuff. And I still do book tales, and I have a monthly column in the magazine Electric Literature called Book Tales from the Potions Library. So yeah, very witchy there, where once a month we publish a book tale with a little write-up, little description, an explanation of how the cocktail ties into the book, because they're all thematically relevant, and then an explanation of the photo that I take and how that also represents aspects of the book. So I try to like really embody the mood and theme of the book through flavors and visuals. It's kind of synesthetic in that, kind of synesthesia in that way. So yeah, it's really fun. And I'm excited that it resonated with you.
It's just dripping in awesomeness, if I can put it that way, because you know, you think of the genesis of what story is, and I don't care who you are. You could be in Des Moines and pull over into a motel, and you go in, you go through the creaky door, and there's somebody, boom, you are just transported into just whatever this world is. Your mind goes, starts to wander a little bit, and every aspect of, as you just mentioned, of going into a hotel, a motel, where it happens to be, lends itself to story, because that's really both the good and the bad, both the happy and the sad. And people role play, or as you said, affairs, family vacations. It's all in this room. And what I also find interesting for you, Lindsay, and being from Michigan is one of the oddest states in terms of what it offers. It's like 100 states all into one. If you want rural, if you want to be with Larry, Daryl, and Daryl, then you go to the northern part of Michigan. It's as boony as any place in Ontario, with trees and yeah, well, you can do it. And then you go to one side and you get to a place like Harbor Springs, just not far from Petoskey. And this is where like the Wrigleys would summer. So you have the yacht culture and the boat culture, and there would have been hotels in its day in those kinds of places that are everything that you talked about, with very prestigious and wealthy families going up to summer in northern Michigan. And therein lies, I think, again, the kinds of stories that unravel in the Gold Persimmon, that also encompass maybe being there because you're sad, or going because you want to cry, or maybe it's a tryst of a sexual dalliance, because it's all in those four walls, and it's different every time the door opens. I mean, I think it's a fabulous idea.
Thank you. Well, the first seed of the idea for this book, I'm doing the math and I'm realizing, oh my God, it occurred to me like 12 years ago. That's how long sometimes it takes to write and get a book published. I had this idea, and at that point I was living in San Francisco. I hadn't lived there long. I was in my 20s. Before that, I'd been living in South America. Ended a relationship, moved to a new city that I wanted to explore. Was living as a live-in kind of servant, honestly, for a couple who'd, benefited from the tech boom. And I had this idea, and I lived in a little room off the garage, by the way, with no heat. And I had this idea of a hotel to cry in. I think it was a sort of like lonely searching period of my life. And I had this idea of like, what if you go to this beautiful, opulent hotel where everything is designed to serve you, but also to keep you isolated? And what if people go there to kind of grieve their life stories, And so that was the seed, but it took me a long time to turn that seed into anything, because, well, in terms of building story, what do you do when you have people in a hotel not interacting with each other? What do you do when they're in the hotel, but they don't see each other, or they're not supposed to? So I ended up focusing on one of the characters who works at the hotel, and her name is Clytemnestra, which I know is really hard to pronounce. We call her Cly a lot in the book. I actually went through and changed a lot of her name from Clytemnestra to Cly, because I was like, this is too much. It's too much to say over and over, even in your mind. And she is grieving her own personal tragedy, which slowly unfolds in the book. You kind of figure out what that is, and is really drawn to this concept of the hotel. Like, she's devoted to the hotel. She thinks of herself as like a high priestess of check-in, and she takes that really seriously. But then she breaks the rules. She gets involved with a hotel guest, a very charismatic woman who is much older than she is, so more experienced in life, more experienced in love. And they start having this clandestine relationship, and it really threatens the reality that Cly has created for herself. But at the same time, Cly's story is a parallel narrative to another story in another hotel. This one is modeled after the Japanese love hotels, which have really weird out there decor if people haven't heard of them. And really they developed because in Japan, there's certain cultural restrictions and difficulties and people getting together to be intimate. So these hotels provide that kind of service. But again, the backdrop might look like an igloo, might look like a doctor's office. There's really crazy decor going on. So in that hotel, we meet a young, really insecure writer named Jamie, who's there to try to do research for something they want to write, and gets stuck in the hotel when this mysterious fog descends on the city. This is New York City. And they find themselves trapped in there with 6 other people, including people who work at the hotel and some guests, all of whom are bringing their own stories to the party, and total mayhem breaks loose. So how these stories intersect is part of the mystery of the book. You got to read it to understand or not understand, either way, mystery. But that's, yeah, so it took me a long time to kind of puzzle piece this all together in terms of how I could create story out of this concept and talk about things like grief and intimacy and trauma, and also kind of the nature of storytelling itself, and how everything a writer experiences gets reconstituted into narrative of some sort. So that was the impetus there.
How is this not Netflix? I mean, how is this not Netflix? I mean, look, it's almost in talking about things that you may or may not get, like Lost. Or leftovers, right? Like sometimes I'm watching, I'm like, am I missing something? Am I not getting this? Am I not smart? Has my education failed me so badly that I'm staring at it going, where's the popcorn? Like I really think it's okay sometimes to be confused, because that unsettlement, the unsettling feeling is what you were trying to achieve anyway, into sort of that, I'm gonna use a big one here. No, my audience, a verisimilitude. How about, what is a sports show? People are like, hey, wait a minute.
That was a $10 word.
Richards, what's going on? Where's the scores? What's going on with the Leafs?
Mike, the difference about, I'm confused all day, all the time. Being confused with a guide, with help, is a whole different matter. And that's what I love about the Gold Persimmon. Lindsay's writing style, I mean, I'm totally geeking out. This was one of the greatest books I've read this year and possibly many, many years. And the Netflix part of it is that Lindsay's description of it is absolutely perfect. 2 hotels, strange things going on, but it is scary. This is, it's something / a horror book. And the majesty of what Lindsay does in her writing is she builds this thing up slowly. It's a hotel. These things are happening. Suddenly I'm getting scared. This is where Netflix, hello, Netflix, are you paying attention? That Red Orchid Hotel starts to become the Breakfast Club on crack. Like things are not going right. People are hiding in pieces of in washer dryers to try to save themselves. But she builds this up so slowly, you don't even know how dangerous it is. I think of that Netflix series, The Watcher. That, got really absorbed in that. I live in not quite that neighborhood, but there's houses and trees and weird people. This is weird people in hotels. This is a whole other thing. I may not check in again for a while. It's just a fantastic. So Lindsay, in terms of hotels, have you always been fascinated with hotels, or was it just Hotel to Cryan thing that pushed you?
No, I've always been fascinated by hotels. I mean, I've always been fascinated by any space that you could go to and technically just hide out there and just live there for forever, like museums, libraries, all those kinds of public spaces where something private and internal is going on, like you're in your own room or you're reading your own book or whatever. No, that's always fascinated me. But I'm going to tell you guys a secret. I did not know I was writing horror when I was writing this book. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just writing the story that was in me. And so, I've said to some friends when delivering this book to them, welcome to the real weird world of my imagination.
Yeah. See, isn't that's the shocker? Because look, I know we're out of time, but I always think it's interesting because I'm in that category where I write something and I go, oh man, this is so funny. And there was a time where, you know, there was some book agents and stuff like that looking at that because they want to do something by me. And I wrote something that I thought was very, very funny. And they're like, oh God, what's wrong? It funny, right? They're like, this is so dark. This is, you know, they started rhyming off these people that, you know, they said, this is sort of, you know, like, you know, everything with the imagery was like frightening to them. I thought, but funny though, right? They're like, well, in a really morbid way, I guess. And it's like, now people see the inside of what you think of something, someone else interprets it a different way. Now, look, where do we get this book before we leave? And I will get a run. Where am I finding this book?
You know what's great, Mike, is I discovered this book from the good people at McNally Robinson. They're Winnipeg, but they're the best books. Some of the best booksellers in Canada work there. Free shipping anywhere in Canada right now for the holidays. Also specially priced at Amazon.ca. The Gold Persimmon. If you want to check out the drinks and the mixology part, it's L Merbaum, MERBAUM.com. She's got all the stuff there and cool gift packs. You get the book and the mixology stuff. Fantastic
Stuff. Lindsay, thanks so much. A real pleasure this morning. Good luck with the book, and hopefully we get a chance to talk to you again sometime.
Thank you so much. It's been so much fun.
Thanks, Chris. That is Chris Houston. Idea Shop, always a home run. I know we're running late. The Norm.